Simon sets off on the first leg of his criminal endeavour, but takes some unsettling feelings with him, especially his separation from his beloved Eric. He stops for a coffee break at Northampton and is left depressed by the sad sample of humanity he encounters in the motorway services cafeteria. He leaves with the revelation that a lifetime in advertising has left him seeing everyone as a demographic rather than as real people. Back on the road, he finds himself giving a lift to a rather beautiful young hitchhiker. She seems to be a fellow fugitive from life, but it turns out to be mostly her abusive husband that she is running from. She invites herself to stay with Simon at his stopover hotel in Carlisle, and further confuses him by running hot and cold. The excitement of the open road and the frisson of a life of wrongdoing is fast becoming increasingly challenging as his adventure rolls on. A cool breeze blew across my face. I opened my eyes. Apart from me, the bed was empty. I sat up. Where was Julie? And where was that bloody breeze coming from? The balcony doors were ajar and the curtains fluttered. I went over to close the doors. Julie was outside, perched on the balustrade, wearing nothing but a pair of panties and her t-shirt. Jesus, Julie, what are you doing? She turned her head a few degrees towards me. Well, what does it look like? For God's sake, this isn't 20 questions. Get down. You're going to fall, I insisted. You're a nice guy, Simon, but a bit slow sometimes. What are you talking about? Come inside. I shivered in the cold night air. You'll catch your death out here. She snorted ironically and held her arms out like Kate Winslet in Titanic. I want to fall. You idiot. Why was she doing this? Was she angry with me? What did she have to be angry about? I was the one that had been badly treated. If this was just another way of toying with me, I wasn't going to fall for it again. Julie stumbled. I rushed forward and grabbed her around her waist. In doing so, the roundness of her buttocks became pressed against my cheek. Let go, Simon. The warmth of her buttocks was inappropriately erotic. Suddenly, Julie threw herself forward. Somehow I managed to hold on and wrestled her back onto the balcony, where we fell to the floor. For a few moments, we just looked at each other. Julie, what the fuck are you doing? Why do men always think they have to save me? It's men I need saving from. Don't be stupid. I can't just stand by and let you... Why couldn't I say the words? I'd spent the last 6 months trying to find the resolve that Julie was showing in abundance. You have no right to stop me. You know nothing about me, she said. I know nothing can be bad enough to do that. I couldn't understand why I was speaking like this, but the disingenuous words kept coming. Okay, tell me what's so bad, I asked. I don't have to explain myself to you. No, that's true, you don't. She shook her head. It's so easy for people like you, isn't it? You haven't spent your whole life being seen as an object, have you? We all have our problems, believe me. You don't know me either. She stood up. I moved myself between her and the balustrade. You're a man. That's all I need to know. She looked over my shoulder into the blackness beyond the balcony. What does that mean? You're all the same. You only want to save me so you can fuck me. That's nonsense, I protested. In my head, I tried hard to deny all the fantasies I had had about her. Her t-shirt had ridden up, partially exposing her breasts. She straightened it and caught me watching. So, you didn't want to fuck me tonight? I couldn't answer truthfully if I wanted to calm her down. I stammered. She continued. That's all men want from me. She rose quickly, dodging my attempt to stop her. I managed to grab her ankle, but she kicked my hand away. Facing the distant lights of the city below, she exposed her breasts and screamed into the blackness of Carlisle. This is what you want, isn't it? Julie, for God's sake, you'll get us both arrested. Only after I had spoken did I realize the gravity of that statement. Come on, Julie, please. This isn't going to solve anything. I sounded so inane, but had nothing else, so continued. Julie, I know there's more to you than just your looks. I was fast becoming the platitude king. She turned to me with such hatred in her eyes that I wanted to cry. I saw the way you looked at me from the moment you saw me. You only had one thing on your mind. So now you're judging me by my looks? Listen, I'd love to get to know you, but that would be a bit hard if you insist on being roadkill. She laughed. That's funny. Jailbait to whore to roadkill. What a life. Come on, Julie, please. I smiled as reassuringly as I could, then, taking her hand, with much resistance from her, led her back into the room. She told me of the traumatic story of her life, from childhood abuse to the brutal behaviour of her husband. Well, you're away from him now, I said. You can start afresh. No, she said. It's too late. It's never too late. Sorry, another cliché. I should be able to do better than that. She laughed ironically. We all think we can do better than we can. She looked at me, pushed her lips together, and began to say something, then stopped. What were you going to say? No, I'm just being... What? I said. She paused. So you think you're different from all the rest, do you? Yes, I do. One of the good guys, she added, refusing to unfurrow her brow. I think I am. Look, this is silly. You have everything going for you. No, I don't. She paused. I've done something really bad. Really bad. What have you done? Something that can't be undone. Something that's going to get me into serious trouble. I searched her face for irony, but found only pain. Does that shock you? She said. A pretty little thing like me doing something terrible. Somebody as straight as you would never understand. I bet the worst you've ever done is park on a yellow line. You might be surprised, I said. She shook her head knowingly. I don't think so. If there's one thing I know, it's men. We're not all the same. Some men are less blokish than others. Like you, she said. I nodded. She stared right at me. So what's in this for you if you don't want sex? You're in trouble, Julie. I pointed to the balcony. I've just stopped you from doing the silliest thing of your life. I simply want to help. Really? I couldn't work out if she was ridiculing me or beginning to realize that I was different. She walked over to me and almost smiled. Sorry for getting you into this, she said. She looked towards the balcony window and laughed gently. Then, without another word, got into bed. I closed the balcony doors and climbed in beside her. When I opened my eyes, the room was still dark. I wasn't sure how long I had been asleep. Julie was gone again. I immediately looked towards the balcony. The doors were still closed. I relaxed a little. Where was she now? I went to the bathroom for a pee. I expected Julie to be in there, but the room was dark. I turned the light on. No Julie. I peed, washed my hands and returned to the bedroom, trying to work out where she could have gone this time. There was a knock at the door. Why had she left the room? I went to let her in, still wearing only my underpants. "Where the hell have you been?" I said, throwing the door open. Standing in front of me were two men, one in police uniform. "Where the hell has who been, sir?" asked the plainclothes man. "What?" I said. Why were the police here? I hadn't done anything. Yet. "What do you want?" I asked as plaintively as I could. "May we talk inside, sir?" said the plainclothes man, pushing past me, followed by the uniformed officer. I suddenly felt very self-conscious. There was something so undignified about being interrogated by the police wearing only my underpants. The plainclothes man flashed a warrant card at me. "I'm Detective Inspector Johnson of the Northamptonshire Police, and this," he waved his warrant card in the direction of the constable, "is PC Wilkins of the Cumbria Police." He put his warrant card away and produced a photograph from his pocket. "Do you know this woman, sir?" I took the picture from him. It was Julie, laughing with her arms around a man. Probably her husband, I thought. "Possibly," I said as non-committally as I could. I offered the photograph back, but the inspector gently refused it. "No, sir. Take a good look. May I have your name, sir?" "Why? Why do you need my name?" "Just routine, sir. I need your name for the record." "Simon Lee." "The innocent have nothing to worry about, eh, sir?" He paused. "So the young lady in the photo. Do you know her?" "Well, it depends what you mean by know. I certainly don't know her biblically." The inspector took the picture from me and held it in front of my face. "A simple yes or no will suffice, Mr. Lee. Do you know her?" "She was hitchhiking in Northampton. I gave her a lift. And you booked in here? Together?" He suppressed a grin. "Well, she had nowhere to stay," I said quickly. "As Mr. and Mrs. Smith," he concluded. "Well, you know how it is, officer. I'm married. She's married." My bravado cut no ice. "Mr. Lee," the inspector said with sudden gravity, "I'd like you to come down to the station and give a full statement." But I don't know anything about her. To tell the truth, we didn't even, Whether you consecrated your liaison is not really my concern, sir. If you'd like to put some clothes on." I started to dress. The PC was nosing around the room. "What are you looking for? Really, I don't know her." I picked up my coat from the chair. "There's really nothing I can tell you." "So you said, sir," said the inspector, taking my forearm forcefully and marching me through the open door. "This way, please, Mr. Lee." I had sat in the custody suite for nearly 2 hours. I couldn't work out what this was about. My biggest fear was that they knew about Archie. He had said the police were watching him, but I was certain no one had followed me. And why would they stop me now before I led them to the money? No, this had to be something to do with Julie. Inspector Johnson came out of an office. "Mr. Lee, sorry to have kept you waiting. If you could come this way." He led me to an interview room. I was guided to a hard metal chair on one side of a drab metal table. I tried to move the chair a little, but found it had been bolted to the floor. Inspector Johnson sat on the other side, a female PC next to him. Johnson pressed a button on a cassette recorder and spoke clearly into it. 22nd of September 2008. Interview with Simon Lee. Present PC. He paused and looked at the female PC. She said something quietly into his ear. "PC McTavish and Detective Inspector Johnson. Time 0630 hours. He looked at me. "So, Mr. Lee, if you could state your name for the tape." I leant awkwardly over the microphone. Simon Lee? And in your own words, can you tell me how you came to meet with Julie Kavanagh? She was hitchhiking at the services on the M1 at Northampton. I gave her a lift. Johnson waved impatiently at me. I didn't know what he wanted. Go on, he said. Why were you on the M1 at Northampton? Oh, shit. How could I have been so short-sighted? Of course they're going to want to know what I am doing here. Even Archie had the sense to prepare a cover story. I hadn't given it a thought. Shit. Johnson pressed a button on the recorder. The tape stopped. In the radio industry, they call that dead air. Silence. I don't like silence on my tapes. So when I pressed the button, if you would be so kind as to give us your story as to what you were doing driving to Northampton and then on to here, I'd be grateful. He started to press the button, a slight smile tugging at one side of his mouth. And if you could play by the rules of BBC Radio 4's Just a Minute, no hesitation or repetition, that would be lovely. Johnson's finger continued to push down on the button. I had a split second to think of a complete story as to what I was doing here. I couldn't think. For God's sake, Simon, get a grip! A grinding click sounded from the recorder's button as Johnson's finger pushed it home. Johnson looked at me expectantly. He had begun to go a little red with impatience. I had to say something. I've inherited an island, I blurted out. You've done what? Said Johnson. I've inherited an island in the Outer Hebrides. An island? Yes, I said meekly. Just a small one. Johnson was distracted by a PC walking to the room. The PC gestured to Johnson, who waved him over. After a brief, whispered exchange, the PC left the room. Johnson leant over the microphone of the recorder. Interview terminated 06:45 hours. Johnson turned the recorder off. He looked at some papers on the table. Thank you, Mr. Lee. You're free to go, he said without looking up. So he had bought my story about the island. I'm better at this than I thought. Johnson looked up and shuffled his papers like a newsreader. We found Mrs. Kavanagh, and I'm content you didn't know her before you gave her a lift. Of course, I have no idea why you gave me all this bollocks about inheriting an island, but I suppose it takes all sorts. I got up. So I'm free to leave then? Yes, he said, and turning to the PC McTavish. They started talking as if I wasn't there. I moved towards the door. I knew I had escaped by the skin of my teeth, but as I crossed the few feet between me and the door, a feeling of doom sprang from nowhere. I knew I was on the brink of freedom, but I had this awful feeling that just before I escaped, just before I'm through the door and home free, Johnson would suddenly change his mind about me and the door would be slammed in my face. However, I knew this was simply paranoia. Johnson had said he had no interest in me. My hand encircled the cold brass door handle. I pulled the door open. I'm such a drama queen, I thought. Just a moment, Mr. Lee. Johnson's voice made me go weak. Yes, Inspector? What is it? I said without turning around, because I knew my face would betray me. Your car, Mr. Lee. A green Fiesta, right? That's right. I continued to stare at the half-open door. Kavanagh stole it and wrapped it around a tree on the A595 just outside Newby Cross. I turned and tried to be composed. She stole my car? Is she okay? Yes, she's fine, said Johnson. The car's a write-off, though. You need to be more careful who you pick up on the road, Mr. Lee. You're lucky she just totaled your car. Well, isn't that bad enough? Not according to her husband. What, the wife-beater? I said. What's he been saying? Not a lot since yesterday evening. Yesterday evening, when he punched her in the face and she stabbed him in the neck with a pair of scissors, yes. The pathologist said he probably took the best part of 3 hours to bleed to death. ruined the kitchen floor. So as I said, Mr. Lee, be careful who you pick up. Standing in front of me were two men, one in police uniform. Where the hell has who been, sir? Why am I doing that accent? That's the wrong accent. Oh, God. Where the hell has who been, sir? Where the hell has who been, sir? Where the hell has who been, sir? Bop, 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 bop. I've inherited an island, I blurted out. You've done what? Said Johnson. I've inherited an island in the Outer Hebrides. An island? Yes, I said meekly. Just a small one. Just a small one? Why am I going into that accent? Wanker. What a wanker.